Like, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Okay.
Get out there, get yourself seen. And that's exactly what I did. And, I believed in not necessarily the skills as much as I had at that moment, but I knew what I would be able to do.
Welcome back to Artfully Crafted. My name is Alienor, and each week I travel to a craftsperson's studio, interview them, and show you their work. This week we're headed to Essex to meet with Marquetry artist Carl Fox. Carl's work was actually recommended to me by a past interviewee of this channel, Sophia, and based on her recommendation, I then went to see his work in person during London Craft Week at Future Icon Selects Fair, and I was absolutely blown away. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Hi, Carl.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. My little studio.
Yeah, we're in Romford.
Yes.
At the back of your garden.
Yes.
Which is really cool because, you were able to build your studio to your exact specifications.
My little haven.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's so beautiful and it really smells of wood. I love that.
That's good. I got so used to it. The smell of wood and leather, it kind of gets lost. But
it's a really comforting smell, actually.
Oh, good.
So you've just mentioned that you work in wood and leather.
Yes.
Could we introduce your craft and the methods and materials involved?
Of course. So I am a Marquetry artist that works with Marquetry and Parquetry. So difference between Marquetry and Parquetry is that Marquetry is more figurative images, Parquetry is more geometric.
We've got a little bit behind us there. We can just see not the leaves, but the sort of background of it. That's parquet.
Is based on parquet.
Yeah.
So that's based on a heritage parquet. It's a basket weave parquet. This particular one is found on one of the floors in the Palace of Versailles.
Nice.
And so it's one that kind of still gets used for stately homes and things like that. So I combine parquet or Parquetry with Marquetry to create geometric and figurative images with both leather and wood. My leatherwork tends to be more geometric and on the Parquetry side, so quite solid block forms. And with wood more recently, I'm exploring more of the traditional heritage kind of aesthetic that you get with Marquetry, where you kind of tell stories and there's a lot of botanical work and things like that.
So I've just grabbed this piece, which I thought it was wood.
Yes.
But there's some leather in there.
It's actually predominantly leather.
Yeah.
So the structure of it is actually leather that I formed into a curve, created a solid, and then actually on top of it is a traditional Parquetry. So you've got the little Louis cubes, where it's like the 3D cubes made with veneer.
So all of the back here, that's still leather?
Yes. So this is all leather that it starts off as natural leather, which is kind of a creamy sort of colour. Then I form it, and then I stain it, age it, give it patination, and then carve into it, and then repeat the process until it kind of looks like a aged piece of wood.
The reason why I'm so surprised is not just for look, but also the feel. I think, because I've handled a lot of craft pieces, obviously, in lots of different materials. And usually, even when you're deceived by something by eye,
you can figure it out.
Once you pick it up and you can touch it, you can then figure it out. Whereas with this, actually, even when I'm touching it, I can't.
The joy of leather and the joy of wood is that it's so tactile. It makes you want to touch it. And leather, as a material, has always been seen as more of a utilitarian material. And so my idea was to kind of start using it as a structural form and create something artistic with it.
This was one of your first kind of piece of wood marquetry?
So this was part of my training with Quest.
Yeah.
I created this when I went to Williams and Cleal School, furniture school, and I did a couple of days with them just exploring wood marquetry. And the project was to build a tray, and you can kind of put the marquetry over the top of it. So at the time I went down there, I hadn't really started focusing on figurative marquetry. I was still more geometric, and I wanted to practice hand cutting skills and working with scalpels to create a random geometric form with different wood species to create something that is both artistic and useful.
How did you create this and what's the process?
So this was lots of fun actually, because you're on a course so you can kind of just play around, make some mistakes if you need to. And they basically gave us lots of wood veneer to go off and have a little look at, select some for whatever we wanted to do with our project. So I picked some that I felt were complementary in terms of texture and tone, and because I love colour, so you can kind of tell which tones were going to come out of this.
So this whole area here, kind of around it, is that solid?
No.
No?
No. So the base they kind of set up for us. So inside is a substrate, the edges are solid wood, and then the top is veneer.
Oh, so the whole thing is veneered. Okay, fine.
So the way this was created was I made a solid piece of oak veneer, and then...
And the veneer is how thick?
A veneer is about 0.5 millimetre thick before it's been sanded, before it's been treated with anything.
So then it's like raw form when you get it.
When you get it,
it's
about
0.5 mil.
It's 0.6 of a mil generally. The industry standard is about 0.6 of a millimetre.
So there's only... Oh, and then you sand it. So I guess like in terms of when you look at the thickness of this tray...
Probably about 0.3 of a millimetre.
Is the veneer, and then the rest of it is the solid piece underneath.
Yes. And with marquetry, you are working very much with the texture and the tones and the colours that you're going to get at the end to create the finished piece. So you can seek out something specifically to give you a certain effect. So each of the pieces on here give you a completely different texture. The oak is more of a traditional texture, and then you have lacewood here, which I believe is London plain. We have sycamore, which is the white one, which has like a nice slightly rippled effect to it. There's ebony, which is the stripy one. Got pear, which gives you this kind of beautiful apricot-y sort of colour. And then there's some little pieces of dyed bird's eye maple. So each of them gives you a completely different effect. And the way that I've cut it here is it's kind of random in terms of the structure of it. But each piece of the same wood is going in slightly different directions. So as the light hits it, it reflects in slightly different ways.
You're basically making a jigsaw out of thinly cut wood pieces and then using tape to keep it together and using scalpels to kind of cut them.
Yes.
And then at the last minute you're putting it on the board.
Yeah, so you construct the whole image, whether it be a figurative image or a geometric pattern. You construct that completely, and then once it's finalised, you would tape the whole thing up, and then you press it onto your substrate. So you press it onto the board, get it in the press, stick it together. You leave that to kind of cure, so you leave the glue to set properly, and then when you take that out, that's where the fun begins, and you start trimming it up and sanding it. And
so what is that process like?
Terrifying, mostly.
Oh.
Because I don't think it matters how long you've been doing this sort of craft. There's a fear with marquetry and parquetry that sanding through is a real thing. So when you sand, because you're working with such thin material, if you take it even a step too far, you kind of sand through and the whole piece is ruined. So if you're wanting a really polished, kind of almost shimmery result to your veneer at the end, you kind of have to keep on pushing it a little bit higher. And the more you push it, the more likely it is that you might go a little bit further than you thought. So,
okay.
as I say, extreme woodworking.
It didn't happen with this piece.
It didn't happen with this piece, but actually it did happen with this piece.
Oh?
But on the other side, you can kind of see here. So this was what all the learning was about. So this is where I first experienced
Is it okay to
sand
show it?
It is. This is for me. So, it's fine. So here.
So this is what it looks like when you sand through.
Yeah, and this still haunts me to this day. I've just had
Really?
another experience like that, but it has haunted me to this day. I swore I would never do it again, and it happens. So.
And how many hours had you spent working on this when the sanding through happened?
This wasn't so bad. This was a couple of days, so
Okay.
it was fine. And it was a learning experience. It was because it was part of my quest training. It was a time where I was developing my interest in wood veneer, and the idea of my training was to learn more about how veneer and wood reacts to you working it.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I'm very much a learn by your mistakes kind of guy.
Yeah. I would love to talk about the organic work. We've got 3 panels in front of us.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, can we just talk about the fact that how colourful is wood?
It's amazing. So as much as possible, I try and use natural woods, undyed woods. And I spend a huge amount of time researching what wood will give what texture, what tone, what different species, like how they react differently to the finishing. A lot of the FSC certified woods, which are grown specifically for woodworking and things like that, are grown so they're quite straight. It's quite nice when you have a bit of a warped tree or something goes wrong with the tree, because it gives you a slightly different grain, especially with
So for Marquetry.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
But as I say, you need to know how to deal with those differently.
And I guess, because it works for you because you're using small areas of a veneer.
And
whereas
texture.
Obviously,
I'm looking for texture. I'm looking for inconsistencies, and
Yeah.
I want there to be a slightly darker part on the wood, or I want there to be a slightly wonky grain somewhere. But yeah, I try and use as much natural wood as possible. The only wood on here that is dyed is the green.
Mm-hmm. But those colours are sort of, it almost looks red.
Yep.
And the white. I mean, and actually within the green, is this?
So this is olive wood. So the yellow is actually olive, and the olive that I selected, the leaves, half of it was quite a yellowy colour, which is this sort of colour, and then the other half was the grain pattern in it was quite dark. So you're using that dark pattern as your brush making, if you were.
Yeah.
Mark
So there's
making.
probably not that much of it that was actually stained green. You're kind of playing with the idea of it.
No, so the green comes dyed. It's quite hard to dye your own veneers, but yeah, the red is actually it's a type of apple wood, and I've created shadow and depth on it by doing certain techniques that come hand in hand with marquetry. And then we have various different textures and colours coming through on the oak leaves. The wood for the branches I actually selected. When you look at the leaf of veneer, it looks like the little knobbles that you get on branches. So it actually gives you this really beautiful branch texture.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an experience in itself, just getting to know each of the different trees and respecting how they want to be worked. And sometimes not necessarily, if they're beautiful, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to finish very well in terms of marquetry, and also alongside other species. Marquetry is always about thinking 10 steps ahead of yourself.
Yes.
So you have to know, not only do you have to know where each piece is going to be getting placed and things like that, but you have to know what it's going to look like at the end, how once you've sanded it, that will change the colour of it, how when you add your finish, I use oils a lot, but if you were to use lacquers or other finishing products, how that's going to change the look of the colour. So it's a wonderful craft. I love it.
Complicated.
It's very complicated, but
yeah.
it works with my brain quite well.
Yeah.
So,
How do you, like those tiny, like literally like the vein of the leaf, is that also cut by hand?
So I have started recently combining both hand-cut marquetry and laser work, which means that you can kind of push the craft into the next stages of marquetry. kind of pushing it to really push the limits of the materials that you use, and also what we as artists are able to do with it as well. So I use a combination with when I'm doing leatherwork. My leatherwork is pretty much always hand cut. I don't use any laser work on that. With woodwork, it's a combination of the two, and the little veins on this are cut by laser, as well as certain curves and things like that as well. Because you have a lot of species you wouldn't be able to do really fluid forms in, or really sharp angles and things like that, because the wood just splits apart. Oak is like my nemesis.
So again, at the planning stage, when you're deciding which wood is going to go where, you're thinking about individual veneers and what texture you want where, but then you're also thinking, is that going to be a type of wood I'm going to do by hand or by laser? And
there are certain, like here in the woodpecker as well, I put this on my Instagram recently, where you can really create characters within like the subjects of your pieces. And this little woodpecker, there are little characteristics on him, like this little chest bit here and his eye, that gives him like a little personality, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I'd done that by hand, because it wouldn't have been possible for me to personally do. Had to learn a completely new skill in terms of using a laser, and where I have to be able to draw them digitally, and you have to plan not only the figures themselves, but you have to plan the negative space. It's a very fancy version of a jigsaw. I have a slight obsession with researching antique, like Japanese screenwork.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Which is where I think a lot of my influence comes from with my panel work, because it has that kind of aesthetic, but it's slightly more UK-centric, kind of flora and fauna and things like that. So
one of the techniques that you'd mentioned to me was sand shading.
Yes. The lilies themselves, all of the lily, apart from the middle bit, is created using maple wood.
Yeah.
And a maple wood in its natural state is very light, very creamy, but it doesn't have much variance to it at all.
Kind of like what the tip here, right?
Yeah, just right at the end. Sand shading is an ancient Marquetry technique, where you get a skillet or a pan full of sand, heat it for quite a long time, not stirring the sand or anything like that, just leave it as it is. And as it heats, the bottom of the sand becomes very, very hot. And then as you get further up the sand, it's slightly cooler and slightly cooler and slightly cooler. Okay. So sand shading is basically where you take a piece of wood, so maple, and you dip it into the sand, and it essentially burns it very slowly to create a gradient, and that gradient becomes a shadow. So the background on this one is a solid piece of sycamore.
Yeah.
That has been treated in a certain way, and the ripples that you see is actually part of the growth pattern within the wood.
Right.
And I mean, I've chosen this one because it gives you more of a shimmery pool kind of feel for the background of the lilies and the lily pads. And it's a really emotive way of using wood grain to its best abilities, and using it naturally to create kind of emotion with your piece.
Yeah, no, it's really effective because it's really suggesting that sort of, that gentle ripple that you get, like movement. When you have like ducks kind of going through a pond, and like behind them there's like kind of little ripples. Do you sometimes start more with the wood and think, what does this want to do? Or
I think it's a combination. I think as any kind of artist, sometimes you go into a work thinking, yes, I'm going to make this. Sometimes you look around you and you think, oh, that inspires me to make something. In terms of figurative marquetry, it's actually a relatively simple pattern with the lilies and with the pads, but it tells its own little story, which is what marquetry is all about.
Going back to the sort of digital and kind of, I guess, programming kind of side of things.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that in a little bit more depth, maybe?
I kind of went into it thinking, a laser will be a nice addition to my toolbox. That would be quite easy to do.
Because you didn't have a backdrop of like working digitally. Like you really came at crafts from like doing things by hand for yourself, etc.
Totally by hand, really getting in there, experimenting, kind of making mistakes, that's what it's all about. And lasers are no different, really. There's a lot of mistakes to be made. You have to get in there, you have to figure it out. It was a whole new skill to get to grips with, and luckily my lovely partner is a digital artist, so he kind of, I would tell him at the beginning what sort of thing I wanted, and he would do it. I'd watch him, and then I'd get him to teach me how to do it, and now I can actually do quite well. But it has been another craft on top of learning wood as another craft, on top of leather as another craft. It's continuous.
And you mentioned this sort of the finishing side of things. So we talked about the sanding earlier.
Yes.
What are the other steps in finishing the piece? So kind of once you've stuck it onto the substrate.
Once the glue has cured, you need to trim it back so it's the size of the board. And then it's a process of removing any excess glues, kind of sanding everything back. You kind of also have to know with your finishes what effect you want to achieve with it. And also if it's going to be in a high traffic area, if it's actually being used as a useful surface, or if it's a decorative surface to enjoy. Your finish really depends on lots of factors, but it can be things like lacquers or oils, waxes. There's so many different ways, and they all give different effects on the wood. I try and keep it so it's slightly less finished, if that makes sense, so it doesn't have like a real reflect to it, and it doesn't look really shiny from a distance and things like that. It looks almost a bit aged in itself,
right,
because it's got a slightly matter feel to it. And but if you are using it as a table or something like that, it needs to be a lot more durable, so you would use a different finish.
So then the finish is more sort of to protect it as opposed to
protect
achieve an aesthetic.
And they give a completely different, each finish gives a completely different look on the woods. Like wax is slightly less shiny, a bit more matte. You have oils that kind of really make a lot of the colours pop, but they look a lot more natural, but aren't so resilient if you're using it as a tabletop or a surface that you're going to walk on or something like that.
So this is your second career?
Yes, yeah.
Like, how did you go from hairdresser to marquetry artist? And why?
And why? So, yeah, I was a hairdresser for 26 years.
Yeah.
But in that time, I had always spent my free time and free money doing courses, buying materials, buying books, researching craft, because I always wanted to make things with my hands. I mean, hairdressing is a handy job.
Yeah.
You're having to get in there, and it is creative. And I was a colourist, so it was more the science side of things and things like that as well.
Yeah.
But I kind of always knew that I wanted to make things, so I reupholstered things or restored furniture or made clothes, or I did everything. And then good old COVID and the pandemic came, and hairdressers weren't very useful for a while. And it meant that I could sit at home and come up with a new project. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I went online and grabbed some little pieces of leather just to see what I could make. I wanted to make some key rings and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd ever worked with leather, and then absolutely fell in love with it. Once we went back to work, I was still quite quiet, so I was sitting there at the wash basins, sewing, doing key rings, doing wallets, making bags. It was great. It was a really, really great way to calm my mind in a time where the world was a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
And quite scary. And actually, craft has always been a bit of a kind of anchor for me, I guess, in terms of mental health and kind of balancing myself. And it was perfect. It did exactly that. So it gave me something to focus on.
Why did you go into hairdressing in the first place versus going straight into crafts?
So back when I was a teenager in the 90s, I really wanted to do a creative career. I didn't really come from the best of backgrounds.
Okay.
I grew up in a really lovely area, but I grew up on the one council estate in that area. and didn't have a great family life, and kind of had to move out of home quite early on in life.
Right.
And as such, I really I needed a job, and
I see. Yeah.
to get a job, I wanted something that was creative, and at that time, the only creative outlet really was hairdressing. And I went off to work for this company, and it was amazing, and I kind of became this quirky little hairdresser apprentice.
Yeah.
And it was great actually as a queer person as well,
Yeah.
in rural Surrey in the middle of the 90s, becoming a hairdresser and creative. It was such a great part of my life to do. But I became a hairdresser because it was the only choice really, if you wanted to be creative.
Okay, cheeky question, but I feel like in the context of crafts, that, because pricing is something that comes up a lot in these episodes.
I thought you were going to ask me to do your hair.
I mean, that too, yes please. No, what I was going to ask is, in terms of skill required, craftsperson versus like the bit of hairdressing that you were in, like colorist, etc.
Yep.
Like, would you say it's kind of like an even amount of skill required?
I think it's relative, really. I mean, to do what I was doing well for a long time, it takes time and it takes practice and it takes a bit of tenacity to kind of get in there and break the rules and hope that you're not going to ruin anyone's hair.
Yeah.
But it is a craft skill in itself. And the craft that I do now is very similar in that it is repetitive actions, and it is about precision and about working very delicately and very finely.
Yes.
It kind of set me up in that way the two go hand in hand really in a very complete opposite way.
So, and this is where the cheeky part of my question comes in. For two fields where you had, in both cases, you have to have that level of like attention to detail and skill and patience, etc. Where would you say you're better remunerated?
As in paid?
Yeah.
Hairdressing, I would say, definitely, because you are set up to be paid in that kind of industry. People come to you because you're of a certain level and they're expecting to pay the money. And I do say this quite often, in that because of the level I was in hairdressing, people would spend £200 on an hour to have their hair done and not think twice about it. But as a craftsperson, it's quite hard to convince somebody to spend £200 an hour on somebody that may possibly be the only person in the world that can do their specific craft skills.
Yeah.
Because it's not a way that we are taught to think. Yeah. There is the whole idea of the starving artist, or your work won't be valuable until you've died, which is quite a bleak way of looking at it. Yeah. If you go to a craftsperson, their item that you may get from them is from their minds. They are the only person that will come up with that little version of whatever it is you're getting. So there is value in that, huge value in that. I mean, the workforce is a highly talented workforce. If you look in terms of an industry, these people are incredibly talented. Yeah. Yet very, very underpaid. Yeah. And there are some very successful craftspeople out there. Yeah. And that is the dream.
So I think what frustrates me is, you get, again, like you at the very high end of hairdressing. So, you could equate it to like a Michelin star meal. But lots of people will see value in saving up for that specific thing. Exactly. But yet, the same people won't have the same approach for artwork or crafts, despite the fact that actually the longevity of it,
this will be around, in theory, longer than I will. There needs to be some kind of reform or re-evaluation of how valuable that craft industry is. Not just in terms of to the economy, but in terms of personally, like things that are handmade will make us feel better. Like they look, there's a connection to them. If you've actually gone out of your way to buy something or invest in something that is handmade, you have that personal connection to it, and you will enjoy it for years to come. I think one of the key things would be for larger companies, if they have the option or the ability to do it, is to invest in, you know, the smaller businesses, the smaller craftspeople, get them involved, promote them. Social media is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you have these companies behind the craft industry as a whole, then I think that's only a good way forward.
Yeah.
But yes.
So you mentioned that even when you were kind of starting out as a hairdresser, you were kind of, you know, whatever money, kind of like spare funds you had, it was going on to kind of materials and craft projects and things like that on the side. Like kind of long before the pandemic, and
long
you
before.
kind of trying to have it as a sort of side hustle. Were you always making as a kid? Like, is that kind of like something?
Yeah, as I say, I didn't have the best upbringing, but the one thing that was consistent was the fact that I loved to make with my hands. It kept me busy, made me happy, and from as early as I can remember, really, I was always making with whatever there was to hand. And school was a big part of that as well. I would stumble into the little school library when I was like 7, 8 years old and like read through, not art books, but actually my biggest fascination was archaeological books. At a very early age, I know, a bit ahead of my time. Like my only really cultural creative outlet was when we used to go on school trips and things like that. And I remember going to the British Museum and it just being like this amazing place, and especially when you're like a little one as well. You go in, and I remember walking into like the Egyptian hall and it just being all these huge statues and beautifully carved things, and just being absolutely fascinated with it. I didn't have anything like that at home. I didn't have people putting it even on my radar as a kid. So to have this put in front of you, it's huge, magical, like absolutely brilliant. And I would love those school trips. You know, we would go to museums and things like that. But the British Museum particularly was my
like a once a year kind of thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just like, it's amazing to hear that remarkably, it didn't actually take that much for your interest to be sparked, for like a long life
it was
passion
destined
to be sparked.
Yeah.
But if anything, it kind of makes me sad, because I know that since I was at school, since you were at school, like funding for that sort of thing, that's only getting cut more and more and more and more.
I do find that terrifying, that the kind of the cultural, artistic side of education is seen as less than other parts of the education system. And I was well educated, but as a bit of a weird kid at school, or weird in terms of I had other interests. The creative parts of the curriculum were the ones that really got me through. The drama school, like the drama club, art. Is that seen as still as valuable as, you know, doing history or maths or English or, you know, all these other subjects? To some kids, these creative lessons are the ones that will craft them into the people that they want to be. These little parts of my childhood were the things that really kicked it off.
And stayed with you.
And stayed with me.
How did you get from the pandemic is winding down, you're sort of waiting for customers making leather accessories, to then your Quest scholarship, you know, where you're going to William and Cleal making the steam bents with Marquetry tray? That feels like a big...
It was a big jump. Very tenacious.
How many years is that in between?
It felt like a really long time, but I think it was about 3.
Wow.
But remember, I've spent my entire life learning, as well as doing hair. So it was,
so you've got lots of like transferable skills just from like lots of kind of adjacent crafts that you've tried, etc.
Yeah. So my journey went from leathery accessories at the wash basins to designing a bag. I designed a bag that got into a couple of magazines. And then from there, I went for a studio bursary with Cockpit Studios.
Okay.
And got that. That was great. So I was sponsored by the Worshipful Leather Sellers.
So you literally were just like, oh yeah, I'm just bursting onto the craft scene and just bam, Cockpit.
Yes, exactly. You have to bite the bullet. Yeah.
For most people, it's like very intentionally for years they're working their way up to Cockpit like professionally.
Yes.
It's like kind of like their third studio or fourth studio or something like that, whereas you were like, nope.
I was unaware.
Really?
Well, it wasn't that I wasn't unaware, but I felt like if you don't ask, you don't get.
Okay.
Get out there, get yourself seen. And that's exactly what I did. And, I believed in not necessarily the skills as much as I had at the moment, at that moment, but I knew what I would be able to do.
Okay.
And from what I knew about Cockpit, I knew they were there to help you become a better craft business as a whole.
I see, yeah.
And whether that was naive of me at the time, I was like, yeah, brilliant, I'll go for it. And it was worth it because it paid off. They gave me advice and I listened to it and I went with it. And actually there was, after I did the accessories and I got in there, I thought, actually, do you know what, I've got this machinery, I can go off and I can use leather in a different way. I'm going to go off and start doing some marquetry. And then went on to challenge myself to become a marquetry artist, and that was because I got in Cockpit, really. They gave me the confidence to go off and do it.
Wow.
And then it snowballed into me learning everything about surface patterns and pattern design.
Right. Yes, okay, fine. So for you it's like kind of surface, like applied arts, but like for surfaces, basically. That's kind of your thing, right?
Every surface is an opportunity for play.
I love that. It is so impressive just how much you've kind of thrown yourself into the whole crafts world, and you've almost kind of ticked every box. So, I mean, you've done, as you say, you started with Cockpit, which again, like, for most people, that's not their launching pad. That's kind of like the place they get to once they've had a few launching pads. For you, that was like the starting line. You were like, I'm here.
And straight in at the deep end.
Yeah. You had, quite early on, you established a relationship with Louisa from Future Icons, and she kind of has been a bit of a mentor, right?
She's great. Yeah, she's brilliant. She is probably one of the only people. I do have a gallerist, Trevor, who is very similar. Actually, they're very similar people. But she's probably one of the only people that would be like, don't do that. That's like awful. Do something else.
So basically, it's like your person to kind of give you like, she's like the sounding board, the person who will say like yes or
amazing,
no.
But she will also be like.
And I love that because sometimes when people are a little bit too polite, they're actually wasting your time.
Yeah.
It's like you need someone to just, sometimes there's a time and place for it, but sometimes you just need someone to be blunt.
100%. And I've said this to you, I can babble, but I can also kind of go off in a million different ideas. And she is very good at saying, rein it in. Rein it in, stop it, concentrate on one thing, get out there.
Do that one, So there was that. Then, so we've talked about Quest, and so you spent some time with William and Cleo to do the tray behind us. You also spent some time with Ash and Plum.
Ash and Plum, they helped me with patination and aging and kind of aesthetic, I guess. And I did explore patination with wood and aging marquetry and stuff like that.
So through Louisa, you then, and actually that's where we first met in person, was at Future Icon Selects.
Yes, exactly. Done Craft Week.
Yes, London Craft Week. Then you have shown at Collect twice.
I have, yes. Yeah, I have.
Not just once, twice.
The second year I was actually in 2 rooms. So that was like, just go for it. I actually had COVID then, so I couldn't go. It was terrible.
Oh.
I know, awful.
You then did, so you have done, or you are about to do Homo Faber?
I have done. I did the Venice Biennale.
Okay.
Last year, which was amazing, and I'm about to do Homo Faber again in Seville. Right.
And then there's Decorex, which is also something that you're, I can't remember actually when this will be going live, but these are panels that you're preparing for.
Yeah, so these
Decorex,
are little
right?
sample panels showing opportunities for marquetry, but there'll be another big wall piece and some more sample boards as well. It's been a journey. I mean, it obviously is amazing that all these things have happened, but it has been a lot of work, and I have worked tirelessly and endlessly to champion my craft, improve myself, improve like my knowledge of not only my craft but the craft industry as a whole. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster 5 years, and I've loved most minutes.
Apart from probably being exhausted most of the time.
I'm very tired, a lot. I should never forget that I come from a hairdressing background, in that I have been trained, well, I'm not even trained, I have grown up being in front of people and talking to people. But there's an element of having to be fearless in any job when you're self-employed or when you're trying to promote yourself. You do have to just do your research, know what you want, know what you want to achieve, get out there and do it, and say hello to people. Don't be terrified to go and say hello. But a lot of the time, if you're personable and respectful of someone's space, you can go up and say hello, have a conversation, and over time you will see each other and you'll get to know each other and people will get to know you. And I think that's probably one of the biggest aspects that people need to get their head around, is being able to be around other people and kind of ask questions. Ask questions, because there are things that you don't know, and there are people out there that want to help. So
very true. Before we move on from this, there was a couple of companies that we needed to give a shout out to because they supported your bursary for Cockpit and your scholarship for Quest, right?
Yes, the Worshipful Leather Sellers, who supported me with Cockpit. They were brilliant. And I wouldn't be where I am now without the support from them at the beginning. And my Quest scholarship was the Worshipful Carpenters. So it's good. They've been brilliant. They're very supportive, and they really put backing to the community that they've championed since, I believe it's the 1400s.
Wow.
They've been around a long time, and in different capacities, but now they are charitable and they do help craftspeople kind of further themselves. So yeah, wouldn't be where I am without either of them, really.
So having achieved so much in such a short amount of time, what is your dream commission?
Ooh. Somebody mentioned this to me at a show a few years ago, and ever since then I've just really wanted to do it, is to do one of my works but as a floor. I would love to do a floor. Slightly different materials, similar techniques.
Yes.
I would absolutely love to do some kind of floor or ceiling. That would be an amazing thing to do, 100%.
Yeah. Any parting words that you kind of want to put out there about, kind of the future of crafts and what you hope to see?
Yeah, I think really the future of craft is making it viable.
Yeah.
And making it desirable to the new generations of craftspeople that are coming in.
And kind of desirable for clients as well, right?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. It's kind of helping people to envisage where craft fits into their life, whether they're a craftsperson or somebody that can be surrounded by craft. There's a place for craft everywhere. It's just getting that message across to people. But I think craft has a wonderful future ahead of it. It's been around for millennia. It's just figuring out how we go forward with it and how we bring new craftspeople into the future.
Yeah, we need to make it appealing as a profession.
Yes. There needs to be elements that change and there needs to be elements that develop. I think pay structures need to be more refined, I should say.
Yeah.
And also education. Get people involved with materials pretty early on in their lives.
Well, thank you so much for today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and it's always nice when somebody will listen to me go on about Marquetry. So thank you very much for coming.
I've linked Carl's website below. If you have any questions for him about Marquetry, the techniques that he uses, or his work in general, please leave them in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you for watching. It means a lot, especially as at the moment this channel is entirely self-funded. So please spread the word. Like, share and subscribe. See you next week.
It's my turn, sorry. Can't think what I'm saying. Sorry, what is it? I'm trying to remember what I said or what I haven't said and which